the only George Lucas!
Illustrations tell us a story. They evoke emotion in a way that goes beyond words, whether it's a $5 sketch or, off the street, or a $5 million painting at the Met. Each one is equally valuable because each one of them helps us pass on a belief system. You look at cave art and you immediately get the message. We hunt, we gather food, we must work together to survive. You put a superhero comic in a child's hands and they immediately feel we must never back down to the face of evil. These three icons sitting beside me credit narrative art as one of their biggest influencers. And we're here today because my dear friend George wanted to create a space where anyone could come and be inspired by the same art that inspired him. So let's get into it, shall we? George, what is narrative art to you, and when did you first fall in love with it?
Well, I've been collecting art since I was in college, and back when I was in college, which was sort of near the Stone Age, the idea is that I couldn't really afford real art. I love all art, no matter what it is, but I could afford comic art because in those days it was underground, and it was you sort of had to know people to find out where there was a sort of a auction that was sent out on a mimeograph sheet and had some prices and names of art. And so I've been sort of collecting narrative art ever since then, because I could then, in college, I could get an alley-oop for $30. And because the comics were expensive, but the original art wasn't that expensive because it was harder to come by. I've worked with hundreds of illustrators in my life, and they're all brilliant, they're all great, but they don't get recognized for anything. So this is sort of a temple to the people's art.
And particularly many of the pieces we have that celebrate freedom or anarchy, I mean Crazy Cat, certainly, comics were the first one to punch Nazis before movies. EC Comics had a lot of social conscience before or at the same time than movies and so forth. And you have graffiti, you have many of the popular mimeographed forms of art that do that. They are not dominated, and the museum, what is important for me or what is magical, is not a man and his collection, it's a lineage of images. A lineage of images that have been spoken, and we as storytellers and visual storytellers, we have that vocabulary to see where that thing came from, the etymology of that image. And when you think about that, Noam Chomsky said, the limit of your language is the limit of your universe. If you cannot name something, you cannot own it. The same is true for images. And what is amazing about this collection, it will give you step by step how a form of expression came to inform what we are today. Because we are in a critical moment in which one of the things they like to disappear is the past. And this is memorializing a popular, vociferous, expressive, and eloquent moment in our visual past that belongs to all of us, and the museum celebrates this. The size of the building is a temple that says, this is an important thing. This is the clear and art. Imagine for a moment that all we had was classical music and non-melodic music, and rock and roll have never been enshrined in a proper way as an art form. This is what this is doing. He's saying this is rock and roll and it needs to be enshrined.
And what I love about what George and Melody are doing in creating this museum is that it's celebrating and acknowledging and giving respect to an art form that has really, haven't been highlighted before. I mean, I think it's really time to celebrate the artists who have, committed their whole careers to creating this, because it is really hard. And what's terrific for me is that, as an aspiring artist when I was young, I wanted to draw. And this gave me a portal into this world to discover more about it. And what's wonderful about the museum is that it describes all the variety of forms of narrative art. You have Charles Schultz Peanuts, you have Winsor McKay, you have heavy metal magazines, then you have Norman Rockwell and Frank Frazetta and Mobius. Those are all different avenues for a kid to enjoy art and to entice them to come in. One of the things that I found kind of sad though was that, you know, when I was growing up, art, comic book art wasn't taken seriously. It was always diminished. It was kind of like, okay, Doug, you'll outgrow that someday. And I'm so glad I didn't.
One of the other things that I find oppressive is people saying you can do art with an app. And I'm sorry, you can't. You know, it's like you cannot just press a button and get to the middle, because then you will not know the beginning or the end of that idea for yourself. And when people say to you that, they're saying, you know, art is not that important, but it is. It is. And I think the way he's talking about art and narrative is not the difference between eye candy and eye protein. Eye candy is an ornament, eye protein is nutritive. It's a story. And that's the difference. And the difference is personality, knowledge, and emotion. Those are the three things that need to exist. And I'm sorry, they don't come in a fucking app.
This museum is dedicated to the idea that stories, mythology, any kind of story, that is written to affect people and to build community is extremely important to society and creating societies and creating community. Art illustrates that story, and that's the right hand of building a community. Is you need the art to make it seem real. Even, you know, back in the whether it's the Renaissance or the Stone Age, you'll always have a story that people believe. It's mythology. It's not really true, but people believe it, and it binds them together with a common belief system. That common belief system is what is really important. And what we're doing here with the museum is to try to make people aware of the mythology that we live by, and at the same time, let them have an emotional experience looking at art that does tell the modern mythology. And as Doug pointed out, it's more of an exact science than people think it is. And it's a way, the art part of it, is a way of making it really accessible to people and make it so they believe it.
We realize stories shape the world. Stories that tell you the wrong thing about who you are or what you should be to other people. Because one of the narrative branches that is brutally applied is propaganda. You know, and I think the illustration art is not only celebrating the craft of incredible people that have designed movies and narrative art, like, you know, Ron Cobb, Ralph McQuarrie, you know, Mentor Hubner, Jim Steranko for Raiders and so forth, but it's also celebrating an emotional thing that belongs to all of us. Myth belongs to all of us. Propaganda is controlled by a very small group. And myth unites us, propaganda divides us. So if these things are enshrined in the principles that make this not, look, this is a museum where you're not going to have superimposed anybody's worth or value for the pieces. Like George says, you don't like it, move to the next one until one speaks to you. There is not an imposed value that this, you must like this. You know, Da Vinci said, to paint likeness is easy, to paint emotion is hard. And these are all very emotional pieces, and they celebrate things that belong to all of us. One of the reasons we are all here One of the reasons is that popular mythology in forms of comic books of any kind, I don't care if you like underground comics or edgy comics that, have nothing to do with genre, or you like a genre piece, is that we all can access those emotions. That's why they don't belong to the man, they don't belong to the power, they don't belong to our parents, they belong to us. And I think this is celebrating things that speak to all of us collectively but individually. So the size of the museum again declares this in existence in a way that is a singularity in the world right now. And something that can celebrate that form of art.
I think what's remarkable about George is that he leads from the heart. And this museum is him. I mean, it's his gift to sort of help celebrate this. And what I really enjoy about it, honestly, is that, narrative art is a way to educate kids and to sort of like validate and say it's okay to, draw your fantasy, draw things from your mind, embrace comic books. It shouldn't be looked down upon. And what's fantastic is that I think the museum, my hope is that it will inspire, the next Norman Rockwell or Frank Frazetta.